And now we're being asked to take the last step and say, well, it also doesn't involve any notion of sexual complementarity. And by taking that step, we will have essentially drained marriage of all meaning. It will mean essentially whatever any 2, 3, 4, or 5, or whatever group of people want to call themselves married, it will mean whatever meaning they choose to give to it, but it will have no broader social meaning. It will have no broader social context. And there's no reason to expect that the consequences of that will be good. Consequences will be even more serious than what we've seen to date.
As a child of divorce myself, I can tell you the impact is quite severe in a marriage that doesn't appear to work. So help us understand what is going on. What are the studies telling us that's happening to children and to women specifically? What's going on today when marriage is not part of the picture?
Well, there's a very useful pamphlet that was published by Rutgers University recently called 21 Reasons to Get and Stay Married, What the Social Science Shows. And I'd urge people to get that 21 Reasons pamphlet. But essentially, what the data demonstrate, and it's extensive data collected, as I said, over the last 3 decades, that men and women who stay together and stay married are better off physically, emotionally, financially, educationally. So for the partners, nothing for a man and a woman will ensure their success in life in virtually any endeavor, as well as whether or not they get married and choose to stay married. Now, people will say, well, what about the single person? Well, yeah, there can be single people who do very, very well, and there can be married people who do very badly. Statistics don't tell us anything about outcomes for individuals. But if you want to look at what's best for a man or a woman across time and across the group of people that we know collectively as society of men and women, you want to be one of those happy people who are married and stay married. For children, it's even more important. The consequences for children who are raised outside of a home where they are reared by their biological mother and biological father drop off fairly dramatically in every deviation you take from that norm. People will say, well, that's Leave It to Beaver. June and Cleaver at home with Beaver and Wally, and but that doesn't happen, people will say. Yes, it does happen. And if you had to choose, you would never choose to put any child in anything but a home, like you saw in Leave It to Beaver, where mom and dad stay together, are committed to each other. That's what's best for a child. Again, economically, educationally, physically, emotionally, mentally, the children do much, much better. So what these studies show is that as divorce has increased, as more and more children are being raised outside of marriage, consequences for the children are becoming increasingly severe. Judith Wallerstein, in a very important book just a few years ago called 25 Years of Divorce, The Unexpected Legacy, and Dr. Wallerstein was one of the pioneers of no-fault divorce. She thought that it was a good idea 30 years ago, but she followed the data. She looked at what was happening. And people should get that book and read it. The last chapter is a very sobering one. She said, America's culture-generating machine is broken. Until we can regain a notion of marriage, of sexual complementarity and commitment and children, and she didn't put it in precisely those terms, but you read the book, that's what she was talking about. We may not be able to survive 2 more generations, was her conclusion. So consequences have been severe, and we need to stop the decline in marriage. If we're going to make society fair and just, let's make it fair and just. But you don't make society fair and just by calling something marriage that isn't. And that gets me to my final point. Marriage, as I said at the beginning, is based on this notion of sexual complementarity and commitment. and children. No other relationship that we can hypothesize has all three of those characteristics. And what we're being asked to do now by opponents is say, oh, any kind of a relationship has the same social value as this historically proven, this long-lasting, this terribly important relationship. It simply doesn't. We're not being hard-hearted, we're not being unkind, we're not being unfair by simply saying marriage is marriage and other relationships are something different. We're simply acknowledging the reality of things. And we will face, and I think pay serious consequences if we pretend that other relationships are equal. Because why, at the end of the day, would someone want to get married if it really doesn't mean anything anymore?